For decades, this infrastructure was one of the greatest symbols of Japan's economic miracle. Japan was getting richer, its population was growing, factories were expanding, cities were booming, and the government kept building. More roads, more bridges, more airports, more railways, more dams, and more public buildings. For a while, it made perfect sense. Infrastructure connected businesses, created jobs, increased productivity, and helped transform Japan into one of the world's richest economies. But then something changed. Kakuei Tanaka, Japan's prime minister in the 1960s to 70s, was nicknamed the human bulldozer for his love of public works spending. Under him, 10-year public works expenditure tripled from $37 billion to $105 billion. By the 1980s, most genuinely useful projects had already been built, so the government kept funding projects mainly to create rural employment and reward construction firms with political ties. As of 2003, Japan was spending $208 billion a year on public works. Construction consumed 40% of the national budget, more per year than the entire cost of building the Panama Canal, and this spending contributed heavily to national debt. So why is one of the richest countries in the world sitting on the largest government debt of any developed nation? Let's start with number 13, Kobe Airport. Kobe Airport opened in 2006, and there was nothing ordinary about its construction. Japan built the airport on an artificial island. That sounds impressive by itself, but there was already a major international airport nearby. Kansai International Airport was less than 30 kilometers away, and Osaka's Itami Airport was even closer. So the region already had multiple airports serving many of the same passengers, yet Kobe built another one. The problem isn't that Kobe Airport was completely useless. People use it, planes land there, and the airport functions. The problem is that Japan created another expensive piece of infrastructure in a region that already had substantial airport capacity. And that's the first clue to the bigger story. One unnecessary airport might be a mistake, but when the same logic is repeated across an entire country, the bill becomes much harder to ignore. Number 12 is Ibaraki Airport. Japan has 98 airports, which is an astonishing number for a country roughly the size of California. Ibaraki Airport opened in 2010, around 85 kilometers north of Tokyo, and cost roughly $225 million. It was promoted as a hub for budget airlines, but for years it operated with only a small number of scheduled flights. Again, the airport itself isn't the entire problem. What matters is what it represents. Across Japan, regional governments repeatedly wanted infrastructure of their own, because infrastructure brings construction contracts, jobs, investment, and political visibility. And politician can point to a new airport and say, "We brought development to this region." But once the construction crews leave, the airport remains. Someone still has to operate it, maintain it, repair it, and eventually replace it. That's the hidden cost of infrastructure. The construction bill is only the beginning. Number 11 is Kansai International Airport, and this is where the story becomes much more complicated. Kansai was an engineering masterpiece. The plan was to build an entire airport on a man-made island in Osaka Bay so it could operate around the clock without creating the same noise problems that would come with a major airport surrounded by densely populated neighborhoods. From an engineering perspective, it was extraordinary. But the artificial island came with a serious problem. It began sinking faster than engineers had expected. That meant billions of yen had to be spent on reinforcement and maintenance just to keep the airport functioning safely. Kansai isn't a failed airport. It is a major international facility and an engineering achievement, but that's exactly what makes the story interesting. Engineering success does not automatically equal economic success. Japan could build something spectacular and still end up paying enormous amounts of money to maintain it. Number 10 is the Seikan Tunnel. This may be the perfect metaphor for Japan's entire infrastructure problem. The tunnel connects Honshu and Hokkaido, and stretches for 54 kilometers, with more than 23 kilometers running beneath the seabed. Construction began in 1964, but the tunnel didn't open until 1988. That's 24 years of construction. When the tunnel was designed, ferries were the dominant way to cross the Tsugaru Strait. The tunnel was supposed to solve that transportation problem. But while Japan was building it, commercial aviation was changing the market. By the time the tunnel opened, airplanes had already transformed travel between the islands. Japan had spent roughly $7 billion building a masterpiece for a transportation world that was already changing. Number 9 is the Honshu Shikoku Bridge Network, including the incredible Akashi Kaikyo Bridge. The bridge connects Kobe with Awaji Island and stretches almost 2 kilometers in a single suspension span. It took roughly a decade to complete and cost around $4 to $5 billion. It is an extraordinary engineering achievement. But the problem is that Japan didn't build just one major connection between Honshu and Shikoku. It built 3 separate expressway routes connecting the islands. 3 massive infrastructure corridors were created for a region whose combined population and traffic volume never came close to requiring all 3 at the level their costs would suggest. This is where the pattern becomes clear. The issue isn't that the bridges are bad. The issue is that Japan kept adding enormous infrastructure capacity even when demand didn't necessarily justify it. Number 8 is the Trans-Tokyo Bay Aqua-Line. On paper, the project was brilliant. This tunnel and bridge system connects Kawasaki and Chiba and can cut a journey around Tokyo Bay from roughly 2 hours to less than 30 minutes. But there was a problem. The tolls were expensive, and many drivers simply chose to take the longer route around the bay instead. The result was traffic far below the original expectations for years. And this reveals another important lesson. Infrastructure cannot create demand simply by existing. You can build a faster road, but if people aren't willing to pay to use it, the economic return can remain disappointing. Meanwhile, the road still needs to be maintained. The government still has to inspect it, repair it, operate it, and eventually replace it. Every empty lane is therefore not just unused capacity. It is a capacity that someone is still paying to maintain. Number 7 takes us away from airports and bridges and into rural Japan. Dams became an important part of the country's public works system. Take the Togo Dam in Hokkaido. It cost roughly $380 million and took 16 years to build, with capacity far beyond what the agricultural region actually needed. The important point is not that every dam was useless. Number 6 is Isahaya Bay land reclamation. In Nagasaki Prefecture, the government spent decades and more than $2 billion sealing off Isahaya Bay with a massive seawall and draining the area to create new farmland. The project was sold as economic development. The idea was simple: create agricultural land and generate new economic activity, but only a fraction of the promised farmland was ultimately used, while the project damaged local fishing industries by changing the bay's ecosystem. Lawsuits continued for more than 15 years. Instead of simply creating new economic value, the project ended up damaging an existing local economy in the process. And that is an important lesson. Development isn't only about what you build, it's also about what you destroy to build it. Number 5 is regional Shinkansen expansion. Japan's bullet train is one of the country's greatest technological achievements, but not every extension makes economic sense. Several regional lines were pushed through relatively low population corridors, where construction and maintenance costs per passenger became extremely high. And this brings us to one of Japan's biggest structural problems: demographics. Much of Japan's infrastructure was designed during an era of industrialization, urbanization, and population growth. The assumption was that more people would eventually use these roads, railways, airports, and public facilities. But Japan's population began shrinking in 2008. Rural communities began losing people. So the country started facing a strange contradiction. Infrastructure supply remained enormous while the population using it was getting smaller. Number 4 is something much less spectacular, but potentially just as important. Hakomono. The word literally means box things, and it refers to public buildings such as museums, community centers, concert halls, and civic facilities built with government subsidies. The construction itself is easy to celebrate. A new building creates jobs and gives a town something to show for the investment. But the real bill comes afterward. Someone has to heat the building, clean it, staff it, repair it, renovate it, and eventually replace it. And when these buildings are located in towns that are losing population, they can become half-empty monuments to an earlier era. That's the hidden side of infrastructure spending. The construction cost is visible. The maintenance bill arrives year after year. Number 3 is the Rokkasho reprocessing plant. Rokkasho was supposed to be completed in 1997. Instead, its completion date was pushed back more than 20 times, while construction costs climbed to roughly $22 billion, about 3 times the original budget. At this point, a megaproject becomes more than a construction project. It becomes a long-term financial commitment. Once billions have already been spent, abandoning the project means admitting that the investment may have been wasted. So governments face an uncomfortable choice: stop and accept the loss, or continue spending and hope the next billion finally makes the project worthwhile. That's the sunk cost trap, and Japan has experienced it on a massive scale. Number 2 is Monju, Japan's fast breeder reactor project. Monju was supposed to be a technological breakthrough that could produce more nuclear fuel than it consumed and potentially solve part of Japan's energy resource problem. Construction began in the 1980s, and the reactor reached criticality in 1994. Then, in 1995, a sodium coolant leak caused a fire and the reactor shut down. It wouldn't restart for 15 years. When it finally restarted in 2010, it shut down again within months after equipment was dropped inside the reactor during maintenance. Japan ultimately spent roughly 1 trillion yen, or around $9 to $12 billion, on a reactor that operated for only about 250 days. It also cost billions more to decommission. This is the ultimate example of the infrastructure trap. Japan didn't just pay to build Monju, it paid to maintain it while it was idle, and then it had to pay again to get rid of it. And now we reach number 1. But number 1 isn't a single project. It's the entire system. Japan maintains around 680,000 bridges, nearly 10,000 tunnels, and 98 airports. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. Every one of them represents a long-term obligation. Every bridge needs inspection. Every tunnel needs maintenance. Every road eventually needs resurfacing. Every airport needs repairs and operating costs. And eventually, every piece of infrastructure has to be replaced. The problem is that Japan built much of this infrastructure for a growing, industrializing nation. But Japan's population has been shrinking since 2008, and rural areas are hollowing out. The infrastructure doesn't disappear when the people do. A bridge doesn't become cheaper because fewer people cross it. A tunnel doesn't stop aging because traffic falls. An airport doesn't stop costing money because passenger numbers decline. Japan is therefore maintaining an infrastructure footprint designed for a larger and more optimistic future. Japan built some of the world's most impressive infrastructure, but now much of it has become a burden. What do you think Japan should do about it? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.